Got a new shirt. Madame Defarge's Knitting School, cutting edge and revolutionary. Hey, everybody. Uh, let's do a progress report on the socks. This is the edition 3 socks from the Shopville, the people that make Zabberball. I didn't tell you last week that this is 100% superwash. And as I said, it's last week, it's a little cushier than Zabberball. It doesn't have nylon. I've decided to put a very bright pink heel on this, and this heel yarn is, I think, a local dyer. It is from Knitted Wit. See if I can get that. There we go. Knitted Wit. This is called Gumballs. It's called Gumballs because this is the regular Knitted Wit superwash merino sock yarn, but it's in a 45-yard mini. So it's called a gumball. And I divided it up and found that 45 yards is enough for 2 heels. So got 1 heel done. I am just knitting these one at a time. And the color is not coming through super pink on that, but it actually is more hot pink. This colorway is Liberally Bleeding Heart. So quite appropriate, and I really like how it's working against the bright, what are really bright colors in the rest of that sock. On the Scrappy socks, which are the Grocery Girls sock bash theme for December, I am working on them 2 at a time to get them to match. I'm not going to worry about that with the Zabberball, with the the edition 3 ones. That's not a priority, but making those heels bright will help them, and probably the toes as well. Put a little bit of that pink in the toes. Will make them look like a pair of socks. So this is the heel, and these are coming along with that high contrast variegated, and the other one is just about, I don't know which one is long. I guess this second one is longer. I'm working in the blues with that variegated, and I'm doing that until I'm out of the variegated for each one. I actually did split the yarns and weigh them. You want to be a rock star in terms of knitting, get one of those scales, the little gram scales that let you weigh sock yarn in grams, so you can know you have equal amounts per sock. And I'm using that leftover Knit Picks yarn from my basket weave socks to make the heels. That's working out really well. So these will be done this week, and then these will be done next week, I think. Those are my 2 big projects. But then my knitting guild, Fiber Arts Guild, had their Christmas party on Saturday, and I did most of the yarn that was there for their party, for the, what do they call it? It's a door prize. Yeah, I guess they're door prizes. Most of the yarn was stuff that I had brought over. A lot of it was recovered from Marianne's legendary stash, the late Marianne, who left us so much terrific yarn from her stash. And this is one of them. I brought all this, and I actually brought these balls of yarn over to Guild for the party, and then I'm taking them home. So that's fine. When I got my chance to pick something, this is what I picked. It is Nako Artist. It's very shiny. There we go. Nako Artist in there's no colorway listed. It's just 74236, but it's a green and pink and some purple in there, and it's kind of shiny. It is 65% premium acrylic, and 35% wool. And so I brought, and it's six, there were 6 balls of this. There was a price tag on this of $9 per skein. So this is not cheap. Yeah, this is not cheap. So I told people at the party that I thought I would make a prayer shawl out of this. And I brought it home, and that afternoon I had my knitting friend over, and I cast on using size 9 needles. I cast on 57 stitches and started knit 3, purl 3. And I did it for a few rows, and it was just so clear to me that this was not what the yarn wanted to be. This was not it. So I pulled that out, and I pulled out a K crochet hook just to see what it would look like. And I just started a corner to corner blanket. And the moment I started that, I realized, yeah, this is what this yarn wants to be. So there we are. And the colors are gorgeous. It's very soft. It's bulky. It's, here's the, I had that over here. Yeah. Nice big K crochet hook. And, when I'm too tired at 10:30 at night to knit, and somebody somewhere, the finale is on, I'm going to sit and do this, right? And cry while somebody somewhere is on. Such a good show. All right. So, yeah, the yarn wants to be this, right? And the yarn will tell you. With experience, the yarn will tell you. I had a conversation last night with my husband about writing and creativity. And it was interesting because actually, since that conversation, I have had 3 or 4 experiences with coming across situations that related directly to our conversation last night. So this is all kind of kismet. But we're talking about writing and creativity and relating it to knitting, and talking about time and time management and sticking with a project and finishing it, and the fear of finishing something. So my husband has published short stories. He writes every day at his blog. His blog is called Driftglass, and he writes long articles about politics, very long. And he writes every day. He's a trained writer. He has a degree in writing from Columbia College. He's serious about it. And he pointed out to me during this conversation the difference between keeping a personal journal that you don't share with anybody and you put in a drawer, and it has your deepest, darkest, and loveliest thoughts, and working on a book or working on a short story for publication where you're going to send it to an editor who's going to reject it. Or you're going to send it out and it's going to get published and people are going to like it or not like it. Now, you can do both. You can journal and you can write for publication. But if you're writing for publication, you are planning to have someone judge your work. And that means you're going to finish something. And they're going to judge you because this is your baby that you're putting out into the world, right? And so the two kinds of writing, the journal writing that maybe somebody will see someday or maybe never, and the published or the hopefully published writing, are two different things. No, and if I relate this to knitting so much, because if you work on something and then put it in a bag and put it in your closet, and then you start something else and you put it in a bag and you put it in your closet, and believe me, I've been there. I've been that, arrested creative, right? No one can hurt you. No one can say, "Oh, that didn't turn out right," or that wasn't the right yarn for that project. No one can hurt you by telling you whether or not it's any good, because it isn't finished and it's in a bag in the closet. And so I've had, like I said, 3 or 4 examples of issues of time and knitting that came across my transom in the past 24 hours. And so that's a sign. That was a sign to me to bring this up in the podcast. The first one is a new knitting channel that I discovered today. The podcaster is named Nat. Nat is they, them. And they are back on YouTube after 8 years, 2 months, and 27 days. Over 8 years, they have left their YouTube channel idle. And it's time. It's time to be back on YouTube. And they are knitting socks, coordinating with the Twilight movie series. They are fandom oriented, which is great. They finished a pair of socks for the first Twilight, I guess, book. A book or movie, but Twilight, okay? They finished a pair of socks, and they have discovered Chiagu needles. They also have a problem pronouncing that. And I'm a huge fan of Chiagu needles. So despite our age difference and generational differences, I'm a big fan of Nat and their knitting and getting back into it and getting out there again and being ready to share. And the video is charming. I'm going to link to it below. This is the first video, as I said, in over 8 years for Nat. And I want to give Nat all of the encouragement, because knitting socks, knitting socks on Chiagu's sister, sibling, whatever. As my button says, free mom hugs, right? We're there. And consider this a free mom hug from me to you. The second instance of time and getting back into creativity or affirming your creativity. I came across a woman on Ravelry. I'm not going to get into any detail, but they made a statement that the feeling of feeling forced to finish projects felt like a job rather than a craft. And that statement really exploded in my consciousness of, yeah, I can completely identify with that. It gelled so clearly with what my husband was saying about writing, that you reach a point, especially in big projects like blankets or big novels or whatever that long range project that you're working on, where it's a bit of a slog, or you think you're never going to finish it, so put it away. It has to go in timeout. And when does it ever come out of timeout? I have, 4 blankets in the closet now, and this one that I started this week. So I'm guilty. So as I've mentioned to other knitters, you don't have to finish all your blankets today, but how about finishing one this month? That's what I'm going to do with this corner to corner, because it's so quick, and it coordinates nicely with knitting socks, because like I said, when I'm tired, I can grab this K crochet hook and finish my show, and crochet and not entirely mindless, but definitely easier and quicker and less attention needed than knitting a sock. So it's a nice balance there. And like I said, I'm planning to work on blanket UFOs during Lent in 2025. That's going to be my main project during those 6 weeks. 40 days, excuse me. Finally, then there was another one, which I am a subscriber to Louise Tilbrook's Substack. She designed or created, invented, whatever, the mitered leftover sock yarn blanket that I'm knitting. And she came out this week with her temperature blanket. There is a link in the description. I want everyone to go look at it. This thing is corner to corner garter stitch sock yarn. Now, a temperature blanket, if you don't know, is one where you assign a color to a range of temperatures, and then you knit a stripe of that yarn in that color for each day of the year based on what the temperature is that day outside, wherever you are. So it is, most temperature blankets are 365 rows or 366 in a leap year. Um, it is a planned 365-day project. You are planning for this blanket to take a year to make. And Louise Tilbrook writes that hers is well over 8 feet long. She went corner to corner, 8 feet long. And I haven't measured it as I don't have a big enough house. She did a few basic calculations, though, and it comprises approximately, listen to this, 792,000 stitches, 293 hours of knitting, and 1.98 kilograms of yarn. She knit 4 rows a day, and at the center of the blanket, it was 550 stitches. She did 4 rows a day, 2 ridges a day, 4 rows. That meant she knit 2,200 stitches in one day. And it's finished. She's photographed it, and she has published an ebook about how she made it and guidelines and instructions based both on successes about it and failures and things she would do differently, and mistakes that she made in the project. So it's not just a too big blanket. Everything is arranged to put her art out there. So she finished it, and then it becomes a blog post, and then it becomes an ebook, and then it becomes a legend. I'm afraid it really becomes a legend. So much knitting and finished. And not just finished, but turned into a lesson for other people. And that teaching process, that moving on to, I finished this and here's what I learned. I might as well bring this up now. On these scrappy socks, I learned, and I will do this differently next time. First of all, this has ruined my life because you can make, I said this on Blue Sky, I've learned that I can make gorgeous, one-of-a-kind works of art with leftover sock yarn. And knowing that now has complicated my life immensely because leftover sock yarn is all over my house, and now I have a reason to knit more of these rather than fewer. But this was my first effort at scrappy single stripe socks, and I did the color changes on the bottom of the sock, and you can see there, if you can see where the stripes break a little bit there. Yeah, I wouldn't do that again. I'd move the color change to the side of the sock so people aren't stepping on that. It's just a little bit of a ridge. These will be bed socks for somebody, and I will tell whoever gets them, yeah, wear these to bed. Don't wear them hiking because there's going to be you'll feel a ridge, and that might wear out sooner. I don't know, but next time I will make the color change along the inseam side of the sock, and that will make it more wearable and easier to step into. So, lesson learned. And as I said, I know Louise Tilbrook learned a lot from her garter stitch sock yarn. How many? 792,000 stitch temperature blanket. And then there was a fourth one on Blue Sky today. Came across a person named ADHD Crafter 9 at Blue Sky. Hi. Who replied to someone who had knit a washcloth and asked the person who had knit the washcloth, nice, what are your go-to patterns? I'm fairly new to knitting, and I'm having a tough time finding any that work up quick but aren't just super basic. And I replied, super basic is the way to go. Why are you looking for complicated washcloth patterns? Go with garter. What happens, when you go complicated. It's a washcloth. Uh, Now that doesn't mean you can't use washcloths to learn complicated stitches. I think that's a great way to learn lace work or cables or whatever. That's a fantastic way to play around with stitches. But one of the things that happens when we're trying to finish things and we're blocked by that is, oh, I can't do color work like Kay Fassett, or I can't knit a 5 skein shawl like that would turn out the way that Stephen West or Casa Pinka make these beautiful shawls. Um, what if you just did garter for a year? You'd wind up with a beautiful temperature blanket that's legendary throughout the internet. Don't be too hard on yourself. This is about learning and taking things on. And if you decide to take on that challenging project, well, let me dive into this. I want to dive into a couple books that I pulled off my shelves in this conversation. I'm breaking here to bring these up because it's all on topic. This one is called Into the Deep: A Writer's Look at Creativity by Susan McBride Ells. It's an old book. It's from the 80s. Let me see when it was published. I didn't check that. 94. Okay, 1994. Sorry. Writing about writing. And writing about writing about writing, believe it or not. And she goes into this whole thing of the journal versus published writing, or and a writer's journal, which basically a lot of this book is her writer's journal, sharing with you the process. And she says in this book, during the early stages of writing about my novel, I couldn't accept this activity as real productive writing. That's that journal part of it. I was pretending to be a writer. I felt guilty. Why? Because I had heard and read too often about how most writers jump into their work writing. They don't pussyfoot around the pool writing about their work. E.L. Doctorow says, planning to write is not writing. Outlining a book is not writing. Researching is not writing. Talking to people about what you're doing, none of that is writing. Writing is writing. And I think we can relate that to growing up as knitters to the point where we're not just playing around with yarn. We're finishing projects. We're wearing what we finish. We're showing off what we finish. And getting to that level of maturity of realizing, buying yarn, scrolling Ravelry, posting on social media about knitting, going to guild meetings. None of that is actually making a sweater. And then she goes on, Susan does, and she talks about the tortoise and the hare and this race where the hare is the writing about writing and moving your brain around to everything but finishing the novel. And the tortoise is the straight line of finishing the novel that wins the race. But she found out something interesting. She found out that it's not the tortoise versus the hare. It is a relay race. The hare and tortoise, no longer competitors, became a relay team. Together, they would win the race. In this sense, Doctorow is wrong. I could not separate the planning, researching, and daydreaming that occurred while writing about from writing. Toni Morrison says, I type in one place, but I write all over the house. And that really spoke to me about knitting too, because going through Ravelry feeds your knitting mind. Looking at yarn and shopping for yarn from time to time feeds your knitting life. And then playing with yarn, swatching, finding out what that yarn wants to be is feeding your knitting life. And so I think it's important for me to a certain extent, just let go of perfectionism, of course, and focus on finishing. Like I said, these socks, to my mind, have a mistake in them. There is color change at the foot, at the bottom of the foot, which I won't do again. But I'm going to finish these because these are in my mind a first effort, a sample, and they'll get done. And the next pair I make will be better. And that's art. But it's not I knit a sock until I knit an entire sock. You see what I mean? It's the art. And you're an artist. If you're a knitter, you're an artist. Say that to yourself 3,000 times. And I have another book here, which is a little dense, but I like it. I like the title, and I like a lot of what it has to say. This is by David Bales and Ted Orland. Let's see if this was also published in 94. 93. You can tell where I was. I was in graduate school at this point, but Art and Fear, Observations on the Perils and Rewards of Art Making. And there's just one little bit in this that to me was hilarious. I'll end with this. Question: will anyone ever match the genius of Mozart? Answer: no. Thank you. Now can we get on with our work? So, maybe none of us will be Kay Fassett. Maybe we'll all be knitting garter for the rest of our lives. But you know what you make with garter? 8-foot temperature blankets. So what a thing. All right. Finishing up, don't forget, I always say this, 2025, the year of UFOs. Finish your frog on Ravelry. It will be linked below. Please come over and join us. Lots of good ideas on how to arrange this and get people having a quick win in January. That's sort of what we're looking for, is getting out something that you really can finish in a month and finishing it so that you have that under your belt, and so that New Year's resolution gets fed. Because 3 weeks is how long most New Year's resolutions last 3 weeks. So we don't want that. We want to go all year finishing lots and lots of unfinished objects. Follow me on Blue Sky. That's where all the knitters are. We love you. Come on over. And we will see you next week with some finished socks. Thanks. Bye.